Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. An invasive species of clams has wildlife officials considering doing something never done before, draining Lake Elmo.
We've got an update on the story we first told you about Tuesday. The possibility the 64-acre lake in the Billings Heights could be drained dry to get rid of Asian clams.
Fish, Wildlife and Parks first found those invasive Asian clams in Lake Elmo last summer.
It may take draining the lake to get rid of the shellfish, but it's going to take a while before that decision is made. Q2's David J. standing by now with the very latest. David.
Jeanelle and Russ, many questions will have to be asked and answered when FWP has the information. The decision could be to drain the lake next winter, drain it later, or do nothing. Last summer, the clams were found near the boat dock at Lake Elmo. The clams are dime and quarter sized, and they may have come from a boat that had been on the Columbia River in Oregon. Bob Gibson says that an environmental assessment will have to be done, and draining the lake to make it cold and dry is the best way to get rid of the clams. It's a method that has worked for other invasive species around the country.
States like Nebraska have drained ponds and have drained lakes, some of them much bigger than Lake Elmo, to get rid of invasive species specifically. And we will definitely be consulting with those folks. There's a sense of urgency because we don't want the clams to move from the lake to any other water body in Montana. This is the only place that they exist in Montana right now.
And Bob Gibson says FWP will soon hold a meeting for concerns and questions from the public, including from the Billings Bench Water Association, which owns the canals that allow water into and out of the lake. Russ, Jeanelle?
All right. Thank you, David.
Arrest warrants have been issued for 3 senior officials of the Crow tribe following last year's power struggle over tribal leadership.
Crow Vice Chairman Carlson Goes Ahead, Vice Secretary Sean Backbone, and Tribal Senator Frank White Clay face criminal charges from the tribe of official misconduct, theft of financial documents, and criminal trespass. Tribal prosecutor Dan Minnis told Q2 that the 3 violated the election ordinance last year when they and other opponents of Chairman Elvin A.J. Not Afraid tried to remove him from his position by holding a recall election.
They're accused of removing financial documents from the Crow Financial Building. They could face up to a year in jail if convicted under tribal law. Now, Not Afraid was removed as chairman in the recall, but then reinstalled when a special judge later blocked the election results.
Now, attorneys for the 3 men denied the allegations to the Associated Press, calling those charges politically motivated ahead of this year's tribal elections.
Well, 2 people died in a head-on crash between a school bus and a small car in Rosebud County this morning. It happened on Highway 212 between Lame Deer and Ashland just before 7 o'clock. Montana Highway Patrol Trooper Scott McDermott tells us tonight that the Busby school bus was traveling west and the car heading east. He says the roads were icy and the car and bus collided head-on. The 2 adults in the car with Montana license plates were killed. One student, the bus driver, and a bus monitor were not seriously injured but were taken to the hospital. The names of the victims and circumstances leading up to the crash have not yet been released.
Another attempt to legalize marijuana in Montana. It's a hot topic that voters could possibly have their say on in November. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian looks at how this latest proposal differs from the others.
Last week, a committee called Montana Can submitted a revised draft for a marijuana legalization ballot initiative to the Montana Secretary of State's office. It comes just over a week after another group, New Approach Montana, filed their own proposed initiatives. Montana Can leaders say they worked with current marijuana providers in Montana and advocates in other states to put together a draft.
I'm just trying to make sure that the cannabis community is represented and has another option.
One of the biggest differences between Montana Can's proposal and the other plan is in the minimum age to purchase and use marijuana. Montana Can would set the age to 18 instead of 21. Analysts believe the Montana Constitution would have to be amended in order to make the minimum age higher than 18. New Approach is proposing a separate initiative to make that change. Montana Can Executive Director Erica Ciate says the legislature can raise the age later if they choose.
Personally, I don't feel that the age change belongs in the Constitution, and I do believe that adults are adults at 18.
Montana Can's draft also sets a 5% tax on recreational marijuana sales, compared to New Approach's 20%. Ciate says a congressional proposal to decriminalize marijuana included a federal tax of 5%.
Which made me go, why are we looking at giving 3 or 4 times that to the state?
It will take more than 25,000 signatures for Montana Can's initiative to make the November ballot.
It's going to be a great discussion from here on out with the public, and that's what's exciting to me, is that the voters can decide.
In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
Leaders with New Approach Montana, the group advocating the other legislative initiatives, say that their polling shows Montana voters will only support legalization if the minimum age is 21.
Well, if you want to grow hemp this year, now's the time to apply. The Montana State Hemp Program is now accepting license applications for the 2020 growing season. The Montana Department of Agriculture operates the program under authorities provided by the 2014 Farm Bill. State data shows Montana's hemp program grew from 58 licenses in 2018 to nearly 300 in 2019. The acres of land more than doubled last year to more than 50,000 acres, which makes Montana a leading producer of hemp here in the state. Now, the application fee is $850 and is due by April 30th.
If you want a sports wagering license in Montana, your business must serve alcohol. A lawsuit challenging the Montana Lottery on that requirement has been denied. Judge Kathy Seeley ruled against an injunction filed by a Billings-based investment group. The injunction would have stopped the lottery from issuing those sports betting licenses until the lawsuit is resolved. A Ready Group has already been granted a gambling operator license, but still argued against the need for alcohol. The lottery says it's received hundreds of applications from businesses and is in the process right now of reviewing those applications.
And now turning to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire, the winds are starting to roar, and we have our first official fire watch of the season.
It's hard to believe it's coming up on Saturday. And of course, we got a big change in the weather. Let me show you what's happening. As you can see here, starting tomorrow morning, Friday morning, 6 a.m. till Saturday, 6 p.m. I should say Sunday, 6 a.m. We're looking at maybe 70-mile-per-hour winds on the Beartooth foothills from Bozeman to Big Timber all the way down to Absaroka. But not only that, all the way up towards north central Montana as well. We have high wind warnings there and high wind watches. Some of the gap flow areas up by Glacier National Park could see winds gusting to 90 miles per hour. Meanwhile, in the high wind watch areas, more like winds gusting to 60 miles per hour or 65 miles per hour. Meanwhile, over by Havre, looking for winds also gusting there to right about to 60 miles per hour out on the flat. So it is going to be kind of breezy, and because of that, Weather Services issued the first fire weather watch for Saturday morning through Saturday evening. Winds gusting to 75 miles per hour with low humidities and high winds. If a fire gets going, it will burn out of control in a hurry in that area. We'll have the rest of your weekend forecast coming up in a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Well, the Senate is expected to consider votes on witnesses in the impeachment trial for most of the day tomorrow, but some are already announcing what their decision will be, and that could sway the outcome.
Katherine Johnson reports from Capitol Hill, where the House managers and president's lawyers wrapped up the two-day question and answer phase.
President Trump railed against his impeachment at a campaign rally in Iowa.
They impeach you, President. No, that's not going to work. They want to nullify your ballots. Poison our democracy.
Back in Washington, the president's legal team and House managers answered questions on the implications of having an impeachment trial during an election year.
But we should never even consider removing the name of a president from the ballot.
Election intervention from foreign governments has been considered unacceptable, and it should lead to the removal of President Donald John Trump.
And over whether the Senate should consider new witnesses and documents.
Can't we take 1 week to hear from these witnesses? I think we must.
They put up 17 witnesses. Will it ever be enough?
Late Thursday, Republican Senator Lamar Alexander announced he would vote against calling new witnesses. In a statement, he said, "There is no need for more evidence to prove something that has already been proven and that does not meet the U.S. Constitution's high bar for an impeachable offense." Another Republican, Susan Collins, said she would vote in favor of witnesses.
Earlier in the day, Senator Rand Paul attempted to ask a question naming a person that some media outlets believe is the whistleblower. It was blocked.
The presiding officer declines to read the question as submitted.
I think it was an incorrect finding.
Republicans have said the whistleblower is one of the witnesses they want to hear from, along with Hunter Biden, should the Senate vote to subpoena former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Katherine Johnson, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Still to come on the 10 o'clock news, tragedy can strike in an instant, and now one Billings high school student is hoping his donations will be the difference between life and death.
And a little later in sports, a giant comeback tonight between Senior and West. Scott will show us who survived.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.